Welcome back to another video, and firstly apologies, there's been a bit of a delay since my last video, but don't worry, things are getting back on track now. This is the fourth in my series of iSax tips. Now these are hopefully short videos just to fix a particular problem that you might be having on the Aerophone. And as always, it's worth watching these videos even if you think you know what you're doing, because maybe I'll reveal to you a few things that you hadn't quite picked up yourself. Now in this one, we're going to talk about a byte setting update. And I'm rather embarrassed to say, this seems to be a setting that was actually introduced some time ago. I checked on the update history, looks like 2021. For some reason, it hadn't affected me at all until just recently when I did an update to the Aerophone. Suddenly all my settings weren't right. But you'll really need to know this because my previous video that I did on byte settings is now a little bit out of date. Stay with me, I'll take you through it. What is this new setting? Well, it's something I hadn't spotted, as I've just said. And it really affects certainly everything I do with my byte setup. Now, I tend to use the Sax byte setting, but it also affects the eWind setting as well. Now, previously we've looked at this in our videos, and it's a setting that is still there, and it's called Assign Source Byte. Let me just see if I can explain what's going on. When we have these assign source settings, we can make a decision whether we want a certain setting to always be the same. This is called a system setting, or whether we want it to change depending on the scene that we're using. So this can be pretty important because the way certainly I set up my byte setting, I don't want it to be changing with every scene. I want my lip control to be the same on every scene, so I set it to a system setting. So we've looked at this before, assign source byte, and I've been telling you to set that to system. Now, something I noticed fairly recently was there's a new setting, bend range source. I think it's probably not very well labeled. It would be better to call it perhaps byte range source. We find this setting here, it's next to the byte calibration, and then we get this new setting called bend range source, and that comes before we set the byte down and byte up. Now, let me try and explain what the difference is with these two settings then. What I've worked out is that this new setting of bend range source is purely about the way our pitch responds to our lip movement. So this is now the setting that I suggest you set to system so that your byte range, your byte control remains consistent throughout all scenes, if that's the way you want it to be. Of course, we've still got the old byte setting, the assign byte source. Stay with me. Now that is still present, but it does something slightly different. Hey, now's probably a good time for you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Please give me a thumbs up. It really helps my channel to grow. And I need to also tell you, of course, about the iSax.Academy, because if you like tutorials like this, then you definitely need to go and visit the iSax.Academy. We've got 3 courses on the go at the moment. The Aerophone Basics course is going to teach you every note on the Aerophone right from scratch. What is your first note? Then we'll play a few tunes using the first note. Okay, here's another note. Then we go on from there. So it really takes you right from day one. And if you're sort of a half retired player, maybe you played saxophone or something when you were younger, this might be a good option for you if you feel a bit rusty on the Aerophone fingerings. We do exactly the same course for the Aerophone Mini, but the Aerophone Mini is a different instrument, so that has some different fingerings. And if you're an advanced player, meaning if you already know the notes on the saxophone or the Aerophone, you need to check out the Advanced Aerophone course. This has been so very popular. And it'll teach you about all those extra settings. It'll teach you about making your own sounds, and it'll teach you about setting up the controls for using the Aerophone exactly the way you want it to. So make sure you go and check out www.iSax.Academy. You can always subscribe to the mailing list. There's sometimes a little bit of news on special offers from time to time, and we'll keep you updated on what's going on in the iSax.Academy. What about the assign byte source setting? Well, let me try and explain. That bend range source, now that controls and that governs what happens with the pitch, how much our embouchure movement will change the pitch up and down. I suggest you set it to system to make sure it's going to be consistent throughout every scene on the Aerophone. Now, the assign byte source is going to do something different now. What we can do actually is have the byte sensor control something else. Now, just as an example here, I'm going to set up a scene where the byte sensor will also work to turn on the harmony or not. So if I set the byte source, the assign byte source, if I now set that to scene, that way I can have an extra control to the way that the byte sensor works. The pitch will remain the same because that's governed by that other bend range setting. But now if I want the byte sensor to do a little something else, like introduce a growl or introduce harmony or whatever, then I can set that on a per scene basis. So I'm going to suggest to you now that you set assign byte source to scene. That way you can have something different for every scene if you want to be controlled by your lip. Let me just show you a demonstration of this then. I've got my bend range source set to system, and then I've set my byte down and my byte up range. At the moment, the byte up range I've turned to off. But now every scene that I play has this great byte control. I can do a nice lip down of, in this case, a whole tone. But if I want to, I can do a really nice controlled vibrato. So I've got that nice bend, and I've also got the control over the vibrato. That's the same for every scene. Now, let me show you this. I'll show you the iPad. I'm going to set up a scene where the byte sensor is going to also now turn on the harmony. Okay, I've got the editor, the Pro Editor app open here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on internal down at the bottom of the screen. And on the byte down setting, I'm going to click the arrow next to the byte down setting. Now, at the moment, its default action is byte down. I could turn that off now for this scene. Let me show you what that does. If I scroll this to the top and turn it off, I've got no byte control with the up and down because of the assign byte source. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that on for the bend range down. Now what I'm going to do is add a second setting by going across to the number 2 at the top of the page, and I'm going to make this be a harmony switch. Now there are 2 little parts to this. You might have a scene up that already has the harmony switch turned on. If you don't, I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But here near the bottom of this list, there's harmony switch, okay? Now if I use my lip, So now what I'm doing is, as I'm lowering my lip, it's also bending the note and adding the harmony as well. And let me just show you how you would make sure that harmony switch is on, just in case it's not working for you. Go back to the main page on the editor and now click on Common. And then if you look slightly further down this page here, there's a harmony switch. We can turn that on and off there. This means that now we've got 2 settings for that bite sensor, as if we didn't have enough, right? But I can see the point of having those settings. It would have been very useful if Roland had made it pretty clear in the manual exactly which setting does what. I hope this was really useful for you, and I hope that you continue to enjoy delving deeper into your Aerophone. Remember, if you found this useful, please make sure you give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. I'll see you in the next one very soon. Bye for now.